There's another narration here. Somebody came to Rasulullah ﷺ and said, but you know, Kasa, he kicked him. He kicked him. And what was the Prophet's response to he kicked him? You know what he said? He said, La ba's. No problem. Don't worry about it. No big deal. No big deal. How is it not a big deal? He kicked him. Rasulullah ﷺ is teaching us something very powerful. A strange incident occurs. And that's what this story is about. This surah is about. On this way back, there was a well, and there were people lined up to get water at the well. And in that line, there's the Muslim army, and the Muslim army is made up of people that are from Makkah, the Muhajirun, the migrants, and the Muslim army is also made up of people from Medina, the Ansar. You should know, if you don't know the Arabic terms, Muhajirun are people who migrated for Allah's sake. So they left everything behind and came in their loyalty to the Prophet ﷺ. So when we call someone a muhajir, it's actually a very noble term. It actually means they sacrificed everything to be with the Prophet ﷺ. They left their home, they left their property, they left their businesses, they even left their families in some cases. And just came because of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So anyway, some of the people there are muhajirun. Other people there are Ansar. Ansar are basically the people of Medina who aided, who provided not small but huge amounts of aid. You see, Musa'id in Arabic is someone who helps. But a Nasir in Arabic is someone who helps a great deal, a huge amount of help. The Ansar were people who offered unimaginable kinds of help to these muhajirun that come from Makkah. They provide them home, they're not well off themselves, but they share their homes with them, they share their livelihood with them, they share, literally every part of their life with them and put themselves at an inconvenience. Nowadays, you and I live in 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom homes, and a guest comes over and you can't use that extra office room anymore, and that agitates you. Back then, their homes are one room. That's all they are. And if you want to make a separate bedroom, draw a curtain. There you go, separate bedroom. And they're not coming over for an hour or two. These are living with each other now. Families living with each other like this. This is not a small thing to do what the Ansar did. Allah even says, وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةً. They give others preference over themselves, even if they're starving. Even if there's starvation afflicting them. Like not just if they're hungry, if they're starving, But anyway, so these are the Muhajirun and Ansar. They're in line at this well, and it just so happens that one of the Muhajirun, one of the people of Makkah, his name is Jahjah. It's an interesting name, Jahjah, and he's the servant of Umar radiallahu anhu. He's in line, and he gets into a little argument with another member of Khazraj, Sinan ibn Wabr. This other Sinan fellow and this Jahjah fellow, they start arguing with each other, fighting with each other, and Jahjah basically kicks him. And he kicks him hard. And when this happens, the Ansari, meaning the person from Medina, the Sahabi who got kicked from Medina, got very upset. And he said, you from Makkah, you get to do this to me? You can't do this to me. And so he cried out. And he said, Ya ma'shar al-muhajir, Ya ma'shar al-ansar. And another narration says, Ya al-ansar, meaning Ansaris, people of Medina, come. Look at what this guy did to me. And then the other guy, Jahjah, says, wait, you're going to gang up against me? I got my gang too. So he goes, Ya al-muhajirin. And all the muhajirun in the camp, they gather behind him. And what was originally an argument or misunderstanding between two people turned into two groups and ready to just fight each other because they're all stressed out and where did this come from? Where did all of this mess come from before we go on with the story? When you say La ilaha illallah, then your nationality becomes secondary. Your ethnicity becomes secondary. Your language becomes secondary. What connects you to another person now is stronger than any of those things. What I want you to focus on is when they called each group at that moment, it actually wasn't about ethnicity. It wasn't. It wasn't even Ya Ahla Makkah, Ya Ahla Yathrib, people of Makkah, people of Yathrib. They didn't use those words. They used the words Muhajirin and Ansar. These words have nothing to do with ethnicity. They have nothing to do with nationality. They don't even have anything to do with region. They actually have to do with contribution. That's what they have to do with. The contribution of the Muhajirun is that they migrated. The contribution of the Ansar is that they aided. So they used words, what I'm trying to get at is they used words that in and of themselves are very beautiful words. These are words that Allah uses in the Quran to describe the greatness of these people. These are not small words. These are far more dignified words than any ethnicity. So on the one hand, there's a fight breaking out, but on the other hand, there's a think of beauty here too embedded that the Sahaba, before they see themselves as people of Makkah, they see themselves as Muhajirun. And before they see themselves as people of Medina, they see themselves as Ansar. But something is in there that says, you can't treat me this way. You came from outside and we help you, and you're going to kick me like that? Wait a second. And then some tribalism is in there somewhere, and it comes out. So this report comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, Da'uha, leave it. Leave it. فَإِنَّهَا كَلِمَةٌ مُنْتِنَةٌ. This is a muntina word. Now muntina is a little tough to translate. A literal translation, like Lisan al-Arab, in Ibn Manzur's Lisan al-Arab, they translate it as الرائحة الكريهة, a disgusting smell. A disgusting smell. Rasulullah says the words they used have a disgusting smell. That's why, leave it. It has a, you know, like when something smells bad, you walk away from it and you leave it. So that's the imagery of the saying of the Prophet ﷺ. The words that have been used here are too disgusting, they smell too nasty, get away from them. Don't indulge in them, don't go near them, don't bring them up again. That's what he's saying. There's another narration here. Somebody came to Rasulullah ﷺ and said, but you know, he kicked him. He kicked him. And what was the Prophet's response to he kicked him? You know what he said? He said, La ba's. No problem, don't worry about it. No big deal. No big deal. How is it not a big deal? He kicked him. Rasulullah ﷺ is teaching us something very powerful. Sometimes Muslims have arguments among each other. And sometimes things get ugly. And when they get ugly, your temper flares. And you want revenge, you want justice for what happened. Somebody has to pay. And when you're calling for justice and making your voice heard and you're raising your voice and you're gathering people around you, reminding them of what one Muslim has done against another Muslim, you are creating division in the name of justice. And you need to learn the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ when he says, you need to let this go and make this not a big deal. Because when you blow this out of proportion, the price will not just be paid. You're not just seeking justice, you're causing a lot of problems in your pursuit of justice. When this fight broke out, the Prophet ﷺ basically gave the advice to diffuse the situation. But there was another person on the other side, Ibn Ubay, Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, la'anahullah, the head of the munafiqeen, who's obviously doesn't wear the label of munafiq. He's among the Muslims. He saw an opportunity. He called all the people of Medina that he could into his camp. His camp was further away from the Prophet's camp, ﷺ. Calls them, sits them down. هَذَا مَا فَعَلْتُمْ بِأَنفُسِكُمْ. Look at what you did to yourself. These people of Makkah, these immigrants came, they take our jobs, they take our money, they take our homes, we provide them everything, and look at how they treat us. This is what you get? See? All they wanted was your money. All they wanted was your welfare. I tell you, we are so dignified. These people are beggars. Because you know, when somebody's a beggar, they're humiliated. When somebody gives, they're the dignified one. These people have no respect. We're the ones that have respect, and they can treat us this way? You know what they remind me of? كَمَا قَالَ الْأَوَّلْ سَمِّنْ كَلْبَكْ يَأْكُلْ. He gives a speech and he says, they remind me of the old Arab saying, when you give your dog until the dog gets fat and it bites you. He called the muhajirun dogs. In his speech, in his camp, he did this. And he's doing this to capitalize, to build the emotion and the sentiment of the Ansar against the Muhajirin. And he swears, he says, you know, the second we go back, guys, the moment we go back to Medina, لَيُخْرِجَنَّ الْأَعَزُّ مِنْهَا الْأَذَلُّ. We, the most dignified, should get rid of these humiliated people. Watch, stop spending on them. He says, he swears to God, he says, if you just stop giving these people charity, watch them disappear and they'll live on welfare somewhere else. You know? لا تنفقوا على من عند رسول الله حتى ينفضوا. Don't spend on all these people around the messenger. Watch them disappear. They'll just disappear. Watch. They're only here for your money. And then they treat you like this. So he's giving this poisonous speech. See, on the one hand, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, let it go. End it. It's a disgusting, filthy word. Don't exaggerate it. And on the other hand, this guy is putting fuel into the fire. He wants to make the fire bigger and bigger. What he didn't know is there's a young boy sitting there, Zayd ibn Arqam. 10, 11 years old. He's sitting in the audience, listening to this entire poisonous speech. He runs over and tells his uncle what Abdullah ibn Ubay said. His uncle goes into the camp of the Prophet ﷺ, where Umar is sitting there too. And he says, this is what Abdullah ibn Ubay is saying. Who narrated it? This is 11-year-old Zayd. That's who narrated it. Now, what is the Prophet supposed to say? Well, we can't trust a child. Child could make anything up. How can we rely on... No questioning. Zayd said it? No questioning. As a matter of fact, Umar sitting next to him said, I know a guy, Ammar. I want you to give me permission. I'll get Ammar. He'll walk into their camp, slowly walk up to Ibn Ubay ibn Salul, who's giving this speech, and slit his throat. Just give the word. I got this. I know just the guy for the job. Rasul ﷺ says, La ya Umar. No, Umar. That's not what we're going to do. You know, because the people will say, Anna Muhammadan yaqtulu ashabahu. Muhammad kills his people. Before I go any further, why would Umar say kill him? Isn't that barbaric? Like Sharia law gets you to kill people? Understand what's happening here. They're a military. They went out as a military. And when inside a military, when they're actively on the battlefield, someone within the ranks of the army tries to create discord between the army, that is considered an act of espionage and an act of high treason, punishable by death because you're putting the entire army at risk. This is military protocol in every military in the world, from history until now. This is considered high treason. So when Umar says kill him, he's not saying some Islamic rule of killing him. He's saying that's how we deal with treason in the military. But Rasulullah says, no, we won't do that. We won't even do that. Even though they're well within their rights, if there was any other military that this happened in, nobody would even say anything. Nobody would say, that's of course, that's what you do. But he doesn't. They call Ibn Ubay instead. Call him, let him explain himself. Because he doesn't know that the Prophet will hear it, but he heard it. So now Abdullah bin Ubay and his khulafa, they've come. They come inside the camp. The boy Zayd ibn Arqam is outside the camp. He has no idea what went on inside. He just told his uncle, remember? His uncle went in and talked to the Prophet ﷺ. The boy didn't go in. So Zayd, Abdullah bin Ubay goes inside, starts swearing at the top of his lungs. Wallahi, I swear to God, who made this lie against me? I believe you're the messenger of Allah. Why would I say something like that about you? Why would I say something like that about our brothers? I have given so much for Islam. I came to the battlefield, didn't I? How can you question me like this? Whose word are you taking over mine? When have I not proven myself? And he starts giving the Prophet a lecture. At the top of his lungs. And Rasulullah says, you can go. He doesn't want to hear any more nonsense. He says, you can. He doesn't argue with him. We're learning something else. There are going to be people who cause trouble, and when you question them, they get very loud. They get very loud. And when they get very loud, what's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? It's okay, you can go. Thank you. Some people are not worth talking to. They're just not worth talking to. That's the sunnah. Let him go. When he lets him go, Zayd ibn Arqam is outside. He sees this man leave, and he says, oh, wait. He's not in any trouble? I told on him, and he's still not in any trouble? So he says, أَصَابَنِي هَمٌّ لَمْ يُصِبْنِي قَطْ. A sadness took over me that had never hit me before. I was sad that day like I was never before in my life. So he says, صَدَّقَهُ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ وَكَذَّبَنِي. The Prophet thought that Ibn Ubay, the guy who was yelling and screaming, was telling the truth. And the Prophet didn't believe me because I'm just a kid. He didn't believe me. That's not the case. The case is actually the Prophet believed him right away, but he doesn't know that because he's on the outside. So he says, I went back to my tent and I just lied down crying. This boy just lied down and he's crying. The Prophet has no idea what this boy is feeling. We learn about that later. Then Allah revealed Surah Al-Munafiqun. I told you this khutbah is about Surah Al-Munafiqun. In Surah Al-Munafiqun, basically in 11 ayat, Allah Azza wa Jal quoted Zayd ibn Arqam. 2 ayat are quoting Zayd ibn Arqam word for word. Zayd came and told the Prophet ﷺ, or told his uncle who told the Prophet ﷺ, they said, لَإِن رَجَعْنَا إِلَى الْمَدِينَةِ لَيُخْرِجَنَّ الْأَعَزُّ مِنْهَا الْأَذَلُ. Words of Abdullah bin Ubay. This is what he said. When we go back to Medina, the dignified ones will expel the humiliated ones. That's what he said. Quran comes and says, يَقُولُونَ لَإِن رَجَعْنَا إِلَى الْمَدِينَةِ لَيُخْرِجَنَّ الْأَعَزُّ مِنْهَا الْأَذَلُ. وَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةِ وَلِرَسُولِهِ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Subhanallah. Word for word, the narration of Zayd is now part of Quran. He said, they said also, don't spend on the people around the Prophet until they disappear. لَا تُنْفِقُوا عَلَى مَنْ عِنْدَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ حَتَّى يَنْفَضُّوا. Ayah comes down. يقولون هم الذين يقولون لا تنفقوا على من عند رسول الله حتى ينفضوا. When the surah is revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, he calls for Zayd, who was crying by himself. He called Zayd, sits him down, puts his hand on his knees, and says, لَقَدْ صَدَّقَكَ اللَّهُ. Allah proved that you're telling the truth. And he recited the entire surah to Zayd, the 11-year-old boy. Before anybody else heard the surah, Zayd heard the surah. This surah, it's like, it has so many purposes, this surah, but one of its core purposes was to, care for the sentiments of this child. This kid who spoke, subhanallah. There are lessons after lessons after lessons inside of this surah. This entire story, what binds it together is one theme. The softness of the heart. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us soft towards one another and clean in our intentions towards one another. May Allah Azza wa Jal not make us of those who forget that the real contribution to our deen is with sincerity to Allah Azza wa Jal. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayat wa dhikr al-Hakim.